I've been combating this stupid little issue with my car, and we're gonna fix it. My car overcharges. It goes up to like 15.5 volts, 16 volts. So right now I got my voltmeter on continuity mode right here, and I hooked it up to the battery ground right there. Ignore that stupid subwoofer ground wire. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna route this here. Hopefully we have enough wire. So I'm gonna test. That's ground, the ground. So use the coilover on the alternator. Ground, 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 ground. Bro, I'll do something stupid. Obviously intercooler piping is a bad example. Throttle body, ground. I don't think, like this is my ground strap. Where are we? So that guy over there, it's like 4 gauge and it goes on the starter wire. Maybe I need another ground. I guess one way to test it is jumper cables, right? Add a ground, see if it helps. Maybe add a ground directly on the alternator, see if it helps. Tricky stuff. All right, so let's start up the car, for example, and show you what's going on. So, put my handy dandy, I cannot reach for my own key, and it's kind of sad. Key it on. Wait, hold on, let me shut off HVAC. So alternator right now, like 15 volts, that's not normal. So 15.1, super annoying. So what I did, put a ground wire on the alternator with a jumper cable and see if it fixes it. Still reads pretty high right now. It's reading 15 volts. So if you look, my voltage is like whacked. So goofy. Alternator is wired correctly, verified that, and I'll show you guys how to verify your alternator wiring. So we'll ground it onto the front cover. Voltage is still goofy, so that's no good. So what I'll do is add another ground and see if that fixes it. Alright, so you see this red wire? Have that on the alternator and add another one of these guys. Like so. Same shit. That's no bueno. That is no bueno. 15.9 volts. That ain't normal. What could it possibly be? Readjust that again. Voltage is still bouncing. So now I took off the alternator connector. So that yellow wire is constant 12 volts, and then the blue wire goes to the dash. And now the overcharging is even worse. It's like 16 volts to the max, so that's no good. Then we'll plug it back in. And then all of a sudden, the voltage is still pretty high. I'm actually looking at an actual gauge. It's 15.0. All right, so the next step of action is the way this wiring harness is actually wired is the alternator plug, this yellow plug, gets power from the chassis, which is controlled by the engine continuity fuse that originally gives constant 12 volt power to the ECU, but I repurposed it for the alternator. So I'm gonna see if this battery source or that pin source, and I'll put a screenshot, has like an excessive amount of resistance or some sort of issue that could be causing the alternator to overcharge. So I took a female crimp to the top pin. This top pin needs to get constant 12 volts, which triggers the regulator to come on properly if I haven't fried this alternator by now. It's not an old alternator. It was an AC Delco alternator I paid relatively around 300 bucks for. So we just got to see and find out. So ran that pin. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna wedge it in between here, give it power. That should hopefully work. Start up the car and see what happens. So that was kind of a fail. So I took the positive wire that's on the alternator and I just used my high-speed fuse in between it instead, just because I thought the contacts weren't great. So we'll see if this works. All right, so after some research, that top pin over there is your sense wire, so that gets constant 12 volts. But the bottom one, let's see if I can you see that bottom pin? That is a horrible view. That bottom pin over there, the one underneath it is the L terminal. So the L terminal works in a very, very weird way. The L terminal connects to the idiot light there at the top, but it excites the alternator regulator to turn on. And in place of that, essentially, like, how do I best put it? It excites, it's known as the excite wire. The excite wire, which essentially tells the alternator, yo, I see something happening, so I'm gonna turn on with that light in place. And hence the reason why I was getting 11 volts. So I don't think that's gonna fix my issue. Wah, wah, wah. Well, I don't think what I'm doing is fixing it. It's not making anything good. You need the excite wire there. So mine technically works if it's overcharging, meaning that my alternator is bad. The only thing that confuses me is if you see I got a wire to the blue wire, which is the L terminal, and I right now have it grounded on here. If I take my key, if I can find it, if I take my key and turn the key on, charge light is currently on, fuel light is on, hatch. So that's the on position. Then let me see what happens if I unground it. Now the charge light is off. Huh. Crazy. And then if I ground it again, I could literally hear a relay click. It's like that, it's grounded. And then all the idiot lights come on. Huh. So let's see what happens if we plug in the alternator. So if you look, all the idiot lights are on and the alternator is plugged in. Key it on, all the idiot lights are on when the alternator is plugged in, meaning that the alternator right now is outputting a ground signal. So whenever it outputs the ground signal, the idiot lights come on. Now, let's go in. Whenever you start up the car, now the alternator shuts off that ground signal and your battery charges. So obviously, like, my door is open, my hatch is currently open, so that means if I'm overcharging like that, right now it's reading, yeah, still overcharging, means my alternator is bad. Don't know what to tell you. So now that I think I've pretty much diagnosed that my alternator is bunk, here is the lesson learned. All right, if you wanted to wire a FD alternator in any chassis, essentially this yellow wire needs to see constant 12 volts. That's wired correctly, that's fine. This blue wire, on the other hand, technically should be connected to an alternator light, so on the ground side of it, and a diode needs to be put in place in between that ground wire. I can't remember off the top of my head, but a diode needs to be put in place in between that light bulb because it recognizes, that helps control it. It's really weird. I'm gonna do some more research, but weird stuff. So if you look, yellow wire is sense, blue wire is excite wire, also known as the L terminal on the voltmeter. Car is off, reading 12.48 volts. And if we key it on, we still got 12 volts. Obviously it dropped a little bit because the fuel pump was on. And then if I switch this over to the blue wire, so on the blue wire, it's reading voltage. And if I turn it off, we got 0 volts. If I turn it back on, we got voltage again. Many days later, copped a new alternator from Rock Auto. This time, instead of the AC Delco, we got this Remy one. Part number is over here, so hopefully this is good. Remanufactured FD alt. Gotta swap my pulleys over, install it, and see if it fixes that issue. Then I can conclude how to properly diagnose if you have a chassis issue or if your alternator is bad, and hopefully this video helps people out. So I'm gonna slap this on the car, see how it is. Should take me a few minutes. Car's sitting pretty. But yeah, all right, new alternator's in. And of course, take off the negative battery terminal if you have your battery relocated and like you have like a circuit breaker, shut that off. That's how people fry brand new alternators. So That's all installed. And for rotary guys, don't have too much belt tension. That's how you mess up your E-shaft. Haven't done it, or at least I don't think I have. Let's see what the car does, if it even starts up, because the battery, I may have left the key in overnight. And that kind of, it's the fate. Oh wait, I forgot the battery's off. I was like, why do I got no pedal? Of course I have no pedal. There we go. Now we got pedal. All right, key in the on position. Seems to be fixed. 14 volts, perfect. 14 volts. Man, never thought I'd see this day. Looks like my alternator works. Now it works. The other one's has a, the other one's doo-doo.